Well, Broncos country, we got some things to talk about today. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for logging on to CBS News Colorado. It is time for Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. My co-host needs no introduction. Brandon Marshall back in the studio, man. It is good to see you. I'm glad to be doing this again with you. Year 2 here on Upon Further Review. Before we get into what's on Marshall's mind and everything that we saw last night in a really disappointing effort. Well, I don't know that the effort was disappointing.
Maybe not the effort, but okay.
The outcome was disappointing for sure. How's life, man? How you been?
Man, life is good. You know, I'm a father.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter's 1, so just trying to, I guess take fatherhood by the reins and roll with it. It's different dealing with a little human, but I love her.
How is she chasing her around the house?
Oh yeah, she's running around, she's walking, she's laughing. She'll run away from you and laugh. She has a great personality. You know, it's funny because like if adults are in the room and we're laughing about something, she'll try to laugh too. She'll say ha 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 ha, but like she gives a fake laugh, but it's beautiful though, man. She's fun to be around.
I love that. Yeah. I love that, man. I'm so happy for you guys and happy to have you back in studio as we kick off this year. Let's get into it. Let's start with What's on Marshall's Mind. What's on Marshall's Mind brought to you by Breckenridge Distillery, the official bourbon of the Denver Broncos. Shop Colorado retailers for their limited edition Broncos Bourbon Blends. B. Marsh, what'd you see last night that stood out?
Well, I mean, what's on my mind is, I'm curious, is the run of the great Broncos defense. Is that run over? We were great in 2015, and the defense has been at least top 10, I think, for every year since then, right? Last night, the way Geno Smith sliced and diced us and carved us up, at one point he was 17 for 18, and he had a touchdown. I was perplexed. I'm confused because I'm like, yo, this is Geno Smith we're talking about here, right? Let alone the Patrick Mahomes and the Derek Carrs and the Justin Herberts of the world, right? So I'm looking at this defense, and they were getting gashed. They gave up big plays, and I'm like, okay, well, right now they might be missing Vic Fangio a little bit. See,
I was wondering that too, and I jokingly tweeted out last night, like, did the Broncos, maybe they should have traded for Geno Smith and not Russell Wilson, you know what I mean? Because that first half, I mean, you look at the first touchdown to Will Dissly, he is wide open. Wide open. I mean, guys were running all over the field last night. What happened in your mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at it, there was another time where tight end was wide open. I think Griffith was covering him. And so, it's just the way that they schemed, you got to give kudos to Pete Carroll and those guys because they got Geno Smith ready.
Yes.
But come on, for the Broncos, that's not our standard. And I'm going to say our because as a former defensive player for the Broncos, I take pride in our defense. And to see them get, it's game 1, it was week 1. So, it's some things along with that and not playing a lot of guys in the preseason, but still, I'm not buying it.
Well, how many times have we sat here and talked about how the Broncos can't figure out a way to cover tight ends?
Yeah.
Right? Yes. And that inside linebacker, and I know Josie Jewell wasn't there, but I don't know that Josie Jewell is necessarily the answer for that role, right?
Right.
And so all of a sudden you're sitting here and it's like, man, same old Broncos, it feels like, especially on the defensive side where they can't cover tight ends. Now, to their credit, they really, I thought, made some good halftime adjustments and shut the Seahawks down in the second half. I mean, the Seahawks had 34 yards of total offense in the second half, which is really impressive. However, you just can't allow that out of the gate. I mean, everything is so positive going into that game, so much momentum, and then they give up a big touchdown drive on the first drive of the game. And I thought that was really like, oh, okay, all of a sudden, Geno Smith, as you mentioned, 17 of 18, 164 yards in the first half with 2 touchdowns.
No way.
You're giving him momentum and confidence.
No way. And that's no disrespect because, Geno is a professional. He's been in the NFL for a long time. But at the end of the day, there's tiers of quarterbacks. And as a starting defense, that shouldn't have happened. Now, I feel like there were some busted plays, like the Will Dissly, he's wide open, busted coverage, right? Even on the touchdown on Griffith, I don't know what happened. Maybe he was looking in the backfield or he was late on it was just a seam route by the tight end. It was very disappointing. But, like you said, the second half, they buckled down.
Yeah.
They buckled down, but it's crazy that they couldn't get it done.
So hopefully that's a sign of things to come. Another thing that we saw last night that I think everybody's going to be talking about today, the end-of-game decision by Nathaniel Hackett to take the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands on a 4th and 5, it still makes no sense. to me, right?
Yeah.
You trade a haul for Russell Wilson.
Yes.
Then you sign him to a contract extension.
Yeah.
You talk about how he's your guy. Oh, we finally got a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
And then with the game on the line, you take the ball out of his hand. It makes no sense.
Also, he's in Seattle.
Yes.
He's in Seattle. He went back home. Like, I would let him, you know what I'm saying, rock in that moment. Now, Ryan Clark tweeted something that was what everybody was thinking. I'm not paying my quarterback $256 million.
Yes.
To then put the game in my kicker's hand to kick a 64. Now, Brandon McManus is one of the best kickers in the league.
There's no disrespect to B-Mac.
No disrespect. But one, we're not in Denver, where the altitude can carry the ball longer. Two, it's 64 yards, right? If it was a 55-yard field goal, okay, I understand that.
Different story.
But look, Russell Wilson, and he was cooking all game. He was playing well, so they should have just left the ball in his hands.
Entering last night, kickers since 2000 on kicks of 64 yards or more were 2 of 28.
Oh, no.
So you're dealing with 7%.
Right.
You got a 7% chance of making that field goal. And I know Brandon McManus told him, hey, look, 46-yard line, left hash, that's the line.
Yeah.
But that's the very last line. You know what I mean?
Line, yeah.
And so rather than giving Russell Wilson a chance on a 4th and 5, you go with a 7% chance of him making the field goal. He misses the first one, which was a timeout, obviously, so it didn't matter, and then misses the second one as well. I just think that if you're Nathaniel Hackett, that was a very, very poor decision. I thought it was a poor decision to not call timeout sooner, and then I thought it was a poor decision to take the ball out of Russell Wilson's hand there.
Absolutely. I think they wasted about 30 seconds. You know, and first of all, you know, once they did call timeout and people walking on the, you know, off the field, you know, the head coach is, you know, shaking guys' hands, hugging Judy. I'm like, yo, hold on. First of all, you know what I'm saying? Does he think he's going to win the ball game right here? You know, and obviously they have trust and belief in B-Mac, right? Which we all do. But I'm not sitting so comfortable shaking guys' hands and hugging guys in lieu of kicking a 64-yard field goal.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a poor decision, and Nathaniel Hackett stood by it. Russell Wilson stood by it after the game, and I think that's just Russell kind of saying all the right things, right? You know, and like you're not going to throw your first-year head coach under the bus after game 1, but if I'm Russell Wilson, man, I am so mad that they took the ball out of me.
And Russell's not that guy. You know, if they would have asked Aaron Rodgers this question, he might have said what he really felt. Russell Wilson's going to keep it, you know, cool and cordial and present a united front. So Russ is not, you know, he's never going to do that.
But here, and I just can't get over it. I can't get over it. I thought about it all night, and I was like, it still just doesn't make sense to me, even after hearing Nathaniel Hackett explain it. The other thing, Brandon, like if you're looking, I think a lot of Broncos country on an overreaction right after the game, right? Overreaction Tuesday, if you will. Broncos country's like, oh my gosh, that was an absolutely terrible loss. And yes, it was. But when you look at the numbers here, like total yards, the Broncos outgained the Seahawks 433 to 253.
Yeah.
If it weren't for those 2 fumbles on the goal line, they win this thing by maybe like 10.
We would have won. And I put on my Instagram that the Broncos going to win by 10. And then as the game went on, I was like, yo, what's going on here? But you're right. You know, the offense played well. They moved the ball really well. You know, Javonte Williams caught 11 passes. You know what I'm saying? And Melvin Gordon ran well, you know, despite the fumble, and same with Javonte. But I thought the offense looked good. And I'm like, yo, this is maybe our first, you know, time we have a really good offense since about 2014.
You got to be able to punch it in the end zone.
Have to.
And you can't go 0 for 4 in the red zone and settle for field goals, and then obviously have those turnovers. It was something that hadn't happened since 1987 when the replacement players for I think it was the Chiefs, did it. I mean, that's
serious?
No team has had fumbles on the goal line. Since the replacement players were doing it in 1987. That tells you how bad things were for the Broncos last night. The other thing that I'm wondering is why the heck are they in shotgun formation at the 1-yard line, right?
Well,
I mean, take me through this from a defensive standpoint, okay? So if a quarterback's under center, one, you got to worry about the quarterback sneak. Now he's in shotgun, you don't have to worry about that. The other thing is, from a running back perspective, your running back's first move is now sideways if they're in the shotgun and not forward like it would be if they're lined up behind a quarterback who's under center. Am I right in that? Am I wrong in that? And what does that tell you as a defense when you come out and you see he's in shotgun, so okay, I don't have to worry about the quarterback sneak?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not mad at the formation. You know, spreading out the defense or trying to, creating the illusion that, you know, we could run or RPO, a fade ball or whatever, and then, because they do that. You know, when Peyton was here, we had, you know, shotgun formations within the 5-yard line, and they would run the ball. So I'm not necessarily mad at that. It was just unfortunate that he fumbled, and the O-line couldn't, you know, they couldn't really hang up or hold up because somebody was in the backfield immediately.
That was Graham Glasgow getting blown up.
They was in the backfield right
I mean,
now.
as soon as Javonte got the handoff, all of a sudden he's getting hit by his own guy.
That was crazy, right? So I think that was on the blocking scheme, but I'm not mad at them spreading out a little bit now. Should they have, get more of a power formation and just run the ball? They could, because we have power backs. We have power backs, right?
Well, and isn't that the whole reason you kept Andrew Beck on the roster?
Oh, my God. And first of all, I thought he played well.
Fullback, I thought he played really well last night, too.
Well.
Yeah. But I would have loved to see him on a golden goal situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, look, I think that's kind of where I sit here today, right? Like glass half full. Obviously, it's a bad loss. It's not the way you wanted to start the season, especially after so much hype and after so much excitement. Like, first time since Peyton Manning was here, you feel like the Broncos finally have the quarterback situation figured out, and then they go to Seattle, drop a winnable game. But I think there are a lot of things here that you can look to on a positive side
100%.
and say, okay, hey, look, cool, we got the Texans coming in on Sunday. We're going to be okay. We got some things we can score away.
I agree. I mean, offensive performance was good. I give them a B, right? And we might not be to the grades yet.
We're coming. That's coming.
I think they did well. Defense, second half, they turned it on a little bit. But, it's not all bad. But there's no way I'm happy about losing to Geno Smith.
Yeah. When we come back, is there something that Nathaniel Hackett did this offseason that doomed his team before yesterday's game even started? We will discuss that next on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Welcome back inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy, as we recap yesterday's disappointing loss to the Seattle Seahawks as the Broncos start the season 0-1. Brandon, it was a big topic all offseason. Nathaniel Hackett making the decision not to play the starters in the preseason. And I thought that there was certainly some rust last night from that decision. And you look across the league, the Bills played their starters in the preseason, come out, put on a really impressive performance to start the year against the Rams. The Chiefs played their starters in the preseason, come out, dominate the Arizona Cardinals. So I think that, yes, it's just one game. Yes, there's 17 of them. But I think that decision, hindsight's always 20/20, backfired a little bit. And I don't know that Nathaniel Hackett would go back and change what he did, because I think that you still want to obviously keep your players fresh and make sure that they make it through the preseason unhurt. And if God forbid, knock on wood, something happens to Russell Wilson in a preseason game, Nathaniel Hackett's going to get crucified.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So that part I get. But I think that if you're going to do that moving forward, you have to be okay taking a disappointing loss in game one of the regular season and basically looking at it like, okay, that's our preseason game. We're kind of willing to throw that one out the window knowing that we have 16 more.
Yeah, I mean, and truth be told, when I was, on the Broncos, and we always played our starters for at least a couple quarters in the preseason game. Like you said, they were rusty, right? The defense was very rusty. They picked it up in the second half, but it was to their detriment not playing in the preseason game, right? So I think you have to get that game feel, that live game action, and it's not the same as playing against the starters, but at the same time you get that feel, you knock that rust off, and you'll be able to come out swinging. I mean, we came out, playing great, week one, because we got some action and some time in the preseason. So I think it was to their detriment, absolutely, for week one.
What is it like for you as a guy who made his living tackling people to watch the number of missed tackles last night? I mean, it was bad.
Yeah, no,
it was ugly.
It's frustrating, and I'm coaching high school football right now, right? So we had the same thing happen to us last Friday. I'm like, yo, what, y'all can't tackle today? Like, what is going on? And we work on so many open field tackling drills and da-da-da, but at the same time, those are kids, these are professionals.
Yeah,
okay, these are professionals. So to watch the professionals do it, I'm like, yo, what is going on? You know how to wrap up. You know how to run your feet. You know how to, keep your head up. And they were just missing tackles. Now, those guys get paid too. That's always the saying. Those guys get paid too, but at the same time, come on, technique and fundamentals win.
How much of that, because you hear a bunch of the old guys say, oh, look, they don't practice as much as they used to. They don't tackle as much as they used to. And I understand it's a safety thing and a concussion thing. How much of that actually comes into play because you don't practice tackling nearly as much as you certainly used to. But then at the same time, like, you're paid to tackle people. You're literally a professional tackler.
Yeah.
I argue that maybe you shouldn't need necessarily all that practice.
I don't think you need it, to be honest with you. You know, to be honest, like, so when I was in Denver, and obviously you can't practice and you can't tackle guys. We can't go full speed and live tackling drills. But at the same time, there's ways you can work on your tackling. 7-on-7 drill, you run to the ball, you get yourself in position, you know what I'm saying, you tag off, right? Or the team period, maybe you wrap up, but you get yourself in position. There's ways to get yourself ready to tackle in live game situations. This is what I've been trying to, tell my high school players. But, because there doesn't have to be a lot of banging, right? This is a rough sport. It's a tough sport. So there's ways to do it in practice that can get you ready.
The other thing I thought that stood out about last night, and I don't know how much of this necessarily would have been different had the Broncos played in the preseason, but you're talking about 12 penalties for 106 yards. You're giving up the whole length of the football field at that point.
Right.
And 7 of those penalties directly resulted in Seahawks first downs. And
the thing is, I'm not even sure if I'm, saying that they should have played in the preseason and that would have helped the penalties, but what are they doing in practice? Are the coaches enforcing certain rules and penalties in practice, or are there any type of consequences that happen if somebody false starts or somebody jumps off sides or anything like that? So practice helps with that as well. How are they coaching and how are they running practice?
Well, and how many times did they break the huddle last night with like 10 seconds on the playground on offense?
Rest.
Yes.
Rest. That's what he's talking about. So that could have helped them. If they would have played the preseason game, that definitely would have helped.
Well, and then you got guys lining up everywhere. I mean, I thought offensively, it was, I don't want to say it was miraculous that they got 433 yards, but it felt like they were always rushing, like they were never settled, like, okay, we got time, we can look at some things that the defense is doing here and kind of figure things out.
Yeah.
I thought that was a huge, huge key. And I think part of that is not only the preseason factor, but you got a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
You got Nathaniel Hackett calling the plays as a first-time head coach.
Right.
And I thought that could have been avoidable and could have been worked out. But again, I think they're just sitting here saying, you know what, we'll go ahead and lose the first game of the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take it as a wash. I don't think they went in expecting to lose, but I don't think they're as broken up about it as everybody else seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not, to be honest with you, but I think they should, because every game matters. If it comes down to the end, it comes down to the end, and oh man, you know what, we dropped that game against the Seahawks, and now we're on the outside looking in for the playoffs. Every game matters, and that's why I don't like the whole thought process of potentially, we're not gonna play our guys in preseason. We'll take the rest, and if we lose, that's fine. We'll keep it. No, we have to win every game. It's win or go home.
Yeah.
That's my mentality. I have to win every game, right? Because you never know what it comes down to.
Let's jump into our report card. Today's report card is brought to you by Colorado Lottery. Play CBS Sport, pick the score for your chance to win $1,000 in scratch tickets. Enter at cbscolorado.com/contest. All right, Professor Marshall, who you got?
Man, I got Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb, it looks like he's returning to potentially the Pro Bowl form. I'm going to give him a B+, and I think he has room to improve. I think, I want to say he had around 6 tackles, a couple sacks. He played well, right? He played well, and I'm looking for him to play even better. And he'll definitely be the leader of that defense.
I'm so happy for Bradley Chubb, right? And I mean, he's a guy you shared a locker room with. He's a guy, as a Bronco fan, how can you not root for him? He's had some ups and downs, obviously dealt with the injuries. I want him to be successful. 100%. And it was so great to see that last night. And I think it really helped him having Randy Gregory on the other side as well.
Yeah, 100% it did. It's that yin and yang factor, the Vaughn and D. Ware, Shaq Barrett.
It's funny how that works, right? So many of those guys, there's always somebody on the other side.
Absolutely.
I think that helped big time last night.
Yeah, and the offense has to choose who to chip or who to slide the protection to, and you have both. You have 2 elite rushers, man. Yeah. You have to pick.
That strip sack that he had, where Seattle obviously ended up kind of recovering it, but I was like, whoa,
right?
Was that 55 or 58 out there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's stealing some of Vaughn's moves for sure. I'm going to give out a grade to Russell Wilson. I'm going to give him a B. I didn't think that he was great last night. I thought Jerry Jeudy helped him out on the touchdown pass.
For sure.
That was an underthrown ball.
I
thought that Russ maybe could have had a couple more completions last night, some balls that weren't precise. But I also thought he was forced to throw more than I think the Broncos would like, certainly more than I liked. When you're talking about 42 times, they came in talking about how this offense was going to be balanced, and I know some of those were screen plays, and you're doing some different things to get the running backs involved, but 20 runs to 42 passes, I don't think that's a good recipe for success.
No, sir.
At the end of the day, he completed 69% of his passes for for 340 yards and a touchdown. So I think there's room to grow for Russell Wilson. I think he had to knock off the rust, maybe deal with some of the emotions, but I like the way that he played last night.
I thought he played really well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they could have done better, but like you said, and your point too, you know, the discrepancy versus the pass versus the run. I mean, are you controlling the clock? You know, are you truly controlling the clock?
Yeah.
If Javonte gets 7 carries, Melvin gets 12, you only run the ball 20 times. Now, they ran it well, you know, 24 over 100 yards. So, you know, they did well with it, but I think they have to try to get more balanced. And I'm wondering if, because Russell's in Seattle, if, you know, Nate let him, you know, cook a little bit. Like, I'm going to let you throw the ball and pass and you know, because I feel like it was like a little grudge match between him and Pete Carroll.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a little grudge match, right?
Sure.
So, you know, Pete, that was his everything. That was his Super Bowl, right? Because they not going. But Russ, you know, Nate probably like, you know, I'm going to let you, you know, do your thing. You back home. So, yeah, I can see that.
Speaking of Nathaniel Hackett, I'm going to hand out a grade to him, too, and I'm going to give him a D. I did not like what I saw from him last night. For all the procedural things, right? Yeah. The penalties, that's on him. Their inability to score in the red zone, that's on him. The timing of the play calls and getting out of the huddle, that's on him. And I could probably give him a C, but he popped off on a reporter earlier this week when asked about, or last week, when asked about, you know, first game in the NFL. He's like, well, it's not my first game coaching. Yeah. Well, you sure looked like a first-year head coach last night. And so I'm gonna give him a D there. Obviously, room to grow. But yeah, I'm giving Nathaniel Hackett a D. That might be. Right.
I'm not mad at it. That's fine. Okay. That's cool.
All right, I like that. Hey, when we come back, we will zoom around the league, tell you what else caught our eye from Week 1 in the NFL, and we'll go head-to-head for the first time ever in our first-ever Underdog Fantasy Draft. All that and more coming up next, right here on Upon Further Review, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Travel consideration is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Welcome back to Inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. It is time now for us to zoom around the league. Zoom around the league brought to you by ZoomCare. Visit ZoomCare.com to learn more about their Beyond Better urgent and primary healthcare clinics in Denver and in Boulder. B. Marsh, Week 1 in the NFL. Yeah. Whole lot of crazy games.
It was a lot. It was
man.
a lot.
That was Sunday, especially that first slate of games on Sunday was so fun to watch. What stood out to you Week 1?
Well, one of my favorite games this week was the Steelers versus the Bengals.
Yes.
Right? It was a crazy game. Joe Burrow threw 4 picks, okay? Minka Fitzpatrick benefited from one of those, and I'm happy because I have him on my fan. We have defensive players now. He got me 22 points. He's one of the reasons I won the game. He blocked the kick. Field goals missed everywhere. You know, Jamar Chase, they thinking that he scored a game-winning touchdown. They didn't. It was a crazy game. Steelers came out. That was one of my favorite games.
I was sitting there. I was at home. I was getting ready to come into the station. I was like, all right, I'll leave at the end of the game. Yeah. Then the game goes to overtime. Right. And I'm like, Evan McPherson lines up. I've got my briefcase on my back. I've got my sunglasses on. My wife's like, you're pretty confident he's going to make it? I'm like, oh, yeah, for sure, no doubt. Right. Misses it. I'm like, I got to go eventually. I got to get to work.
Exactly.
That was a wild, wild game. I'm not at all surprised, though, because how many times have we seen the team that loses the Super Bowl, comes out the next year, has a bit of a Super Bowl hangover? Yeah. I think maybe you saw that with the Rams on Thursday night, too.
Wow.
I mean, the Bills.
The Bills are legit.
Yes.
Okay, the Bills are for real this year, you know, and I'm not saying they weren't for real the last couple of years, but this year I think they get over the hump and beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. You know, but the Bills are legit. They made the Rams look like, you know, it was a JV team, which was crazy.
Yeah, that was wild. Yeah. Speaking of the Chiefs, I thought they looked really good in Week 1 in that victory. I mean, they go to Arizona and just absolutely dominate the Cardinals, really from start to finish. I thought that was a really impressive performance. Patrick Mahomes with 5 touchdowns. That was unbelievable, and we talked about it earlier, right? You play your guys in the preseason, all of a sudden they're ready to go come the regular season. And if I'm sitting there and I'm the Broncos and I'm like, oh, man, we got gashed by Geno Smith in the first half, and we got to deal with Patrick Mahomes coming up later in the year. The good news is those games are much later in the year. You're talking about December and January. So that's the good news. And then I thought the Chargers looked pretty good. You know what I mean? And so a good win for them. I thought Justin Herbert looked really good. And I think that is going to be a fascinating matchup on Thursday night football. We talk about how the NFL does all this scheduling, right? Yeah. They have Baker Mayfield and the Panthers play the Browns in Week 1. They have Russ going back to Seattle. Right. They're kicking off this new Thursday night football on Amazon Prime, and all of a sudden you got a great matchup between the Chargers and the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football. And that leads us in to our first ever Underdog Fantasy head-to-head draft. We're going to be doing this every week, typically with Monday Night Football games, but obviously this week we've got a Thursday Night Football game. This is one of my favorite parts about Underdog Fantasy. You can do this, you get some buddies together or just a buddy, and you go head-to-head on fantasy. You draft for this specific game. It's a whole lot of fun. So why don't you log in?
Let's do it.
And we're going to draft here. Couple rules on this, right? Okay, so you can play for money, you can not play for money. B. Marsh and I playing for some side money for sure. And then we're going to be keeping tabs on how this goes all season long and bringing it back every single week and keeping you updated on what's happening. And then no quarterbacks, okay?
Yeah, okay,
so,
I got you.
Which seems kind of
smart.
fair
Yeah.
because you can do this with 3 people, you can do it with more. And so it's one of those where somebody ends up with like a backup quarterback. Like I was going to take Drew Lock last night, but I didn't.
I'm glad you didn't.
And so we'll go back and forth drafting skill players. Everybody is a flex position. And then at the end of the day, we will wrap it all up. So you're going first. It's a snake style draft.
Okay.
You've got the first pick. Then I'll take the next 2. You take the next 2.
Yep.
I'll take the next 2. And then you get the final one. We're each going to have 4 players heading into tonight's game. This is going to be a lot of fun. As the app loads here, we got 20-second countdown. You're a big fantasy guy. How'd you do this? How'd you do this week?
Well, I'm 2-1. You know,
2-1.
I'm in 3
okay.
leagues. I'm 2-1. So we're gonna just keep our heads down, stay humble.
Right. Yeah, good start.
Keep
to
working.
The year.
You know?
One day at a time. I love it. All right, here we go. You're up first on the clock. Who are you taking?
Man, I'm taking Travis Kelce. You have to. I mean, Hall of Fame tight end. You know, one of the best players in the league. He had 30 points for me in one of my leagues. So I'm picking Travis. I'm trying to click on it, and it's draft. There we go.
Well, and that's Mahomes' go-to guy.
That's his guy. You know, I mean, like I said, he gave me 30 points. He's one of the reasons why I won one of my matchups.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So I'm gonna go for a run on the running backs here. I'm gonna
Okay.
take Austin Eckler, and then I'm gonna go Clyde Edwards-Helaire too with back-to-back picks.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
I mean that's good because I mean typically running backs dominate fantasy, so I'm not
especially
mad at that
on Thursday
pick.
night.
Absolutely.
Austin Eckler, Colorado kid.
You got to go with that. So you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and pick Mike Williams.
Okay, I like that.
You know,
No Keenan Allen.
No Keenan Allen.
probably.
Keenan has a hammy, so Mike will get more targets. And then I'm gonna I'm gonna go with Isaiah Pacheco. He dominated the carries for the Chiefs.
Going deep down the board. All
He
right.
dominated the carries for the Chiefs and scored a touchdown. Right, so. He seems like he's the bell cow back now over Clyde.
I like that. I'm going to go Juju here
Okay.
with, what do we, pick number 6? Yeah, and then I got pick number 7. I really like Josh Palmer, and it might be because I covered him when he was at Tennessee, and so I've got a little little homegrown touch there. Yeah, I'm going to go with Josh Palmer.
Okay, okay, so I have Kelce, I have Pacheco and Mike Williams. I'm gonna go with Scantling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Scantling, man. You know, I feel like he could. Well, he had 4 for 44 last week, but you know what? I'm going with him. You know, you never know.
I like that. I'm
going
that.
with
No
him.
Aaron Rodgers for MVS this year.
Right,
so how
right.
does he adjust? You're like, oh, poor
Yeah,
guy's
you
got no
got
Aaron Rodgers. Now I got
Patrick Mahomes, right?
All right, so a full rundown of the team. My team, we got Eckler, Edwards-Helaire, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Josh Palmer. And then B. Marsh, you got Travis Kelce, Mike Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I like that a lot. This is fun. I'm going to be excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
You bill yourself as like a fantasy guru.
Yeah.
You played fantasy even when you were playing, right?
I played fantasy when I was playing, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm in the locker room before the game, setting up my lineup. You know, and it's funny
I'm
because
glad to know you were really focused on the game.
me and Shaq Barrett actually we played one year together, and we both were setting up our lineups. And that was my first year playing. The year we won the Super Bowl.
Okay, yeah.
I made it to the Super Bowl in fantasy, but I
nice.
lost.
Okay, all
I
right.
lost. But there was times where, you know, the second game of the year, I had Jamal Charles, but I didn't start him because we played against him. But he ended up going off on us.
Yeah.
But he fumbled at the end. I wouldn't start certain guys once we play them, but I would kind of have the drop on them just by watching film. You know, and which is crazy. I didn't pick Peyton up that year in fantasy.
Really?
Just off what I saw in training camp.
Oh, wow.
Literally, literally, and you know, I love Peyton, but he wasn't, you know, he wasn't in at his top form,
Yeah.
you know, that year, you know. age gets us all.
Right, of course.
But I picked up, our defense and certain pieces. So yeah,
it's kind of like insider trading. You know
was,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like it's
Right.
not really insider trading. You just got a smarter football brain than most of the people you're in the league with. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Did you see Calais Campbell this week?
No.
He's sitting there on the sideline. He's like, man, I got Duvernay on my fantasy team, but I benched him, and Duvernay went off.
He went off. See,
yeah, he's like, I got him on my bench.
That's what I'm saying. It's funny.
So this is great.
It's frustrating.
This is great.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that's going to do it for episode 1, season 2 of Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented as always by Underdog Fantasy. Big shout out to our guest, Brandon Marshall, my co-host, joining us today live in studio. We're going to do a lot more of this in studio together. You're going to be coming back in town a lot more. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, make sure you follow us on Twitter at MichaelCBS4. What's the Twitter handle?
At B Marsh, 2 H's.
B Marsh, 2 H's. Love that. That's going to do it for us here on Upon Further Review. Thanks so much for logging on to CBS News Colorado. We will see you next week. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store.